I'm Lyndon Wright. I'm the CEO and co-founder of illuminise, and we are a B2B Magento Adobe Commerce development agency. So we live in B2B space, dealing with huge amounts of data and all the challenges they bring. So hopefully I can bring a bit of insight as to what the developers do about this big problem.
So in B2B, we've got ERPs, we've got product information management systems. Where do you see companies struggling in terms of their product data, and where does the data reside? What systems does the data reside in? And is it getting the systems to talk together that starts to cause some of the issues? Do you have any of you want to become on that first?
Yeah, I'll start because I've got the most recent experience of that pain. We are just about to start looking at relaunching B2B platform, starting to look at relaunching our website. And Paladone was formed in 1994, and some of the processes, tools and systems we have were designed in 1994 and have stayed right the way through. And to launch a product for the last 10, 15 years has meant to go to 5 different sources for information. Once you have all of that, they don't all necessarily align, and then you have to actually guess which the correct version is. And I mean, people have mentioned it already today, is garbage in equals garbage out. And any of these systems are only as good as the information you put in. So we started out by actually implementing a PIM, getting all of our information in one single point of truth, so that we can then actually communicate that out in the right way to our customers. But we're only dealing with a few hundred products. We're not dealing with 90,000 products.
Over to you, Steve.
Yeah, so for me, I would say the biggest challenge, the biggest opportunity is in the people space rather than the technology and the fragmented data space. And just to be clear, for me, product information is not just a hygiene factor, it should be a commercial differentiator for your business. And this is why it's a people challenge that you need to fix. In multiple businesses, but one example that really stands out to me is when the business is digitally mature, you often have people that are either product experts, so like an ex-engineer who really deeply knows their product, but doesn't have any of the digital marketing or the digital skills, or you get people at the other end of the spectrum who are digital experts who can do SEO. So you have to have these big teams to be able to blend the skills together to have the right data that helps you to grow commercially. The North Star is you need to blend them, and actually over time you can enhance people because you'll pick up the skills of each other. But the story I always think back to is a guy called Bill that we used to work with and was in my team. He was the engineer and insisted that he knew best, not the customer. And he insisted that products had to be called certain things. So he said that light bulbs had to be called lamps because that was technically what they were called. And we tried to change Bill, we tried to cage Bill, and in the end we had to remove Bill because Bill would not learn and would not change. And it's an extreme example, but we had to take such drastic action to culturally transform how the business operates. That if you don't call things what customers call them, you won't sell as many of your products as you could do. So don't be Bill.
That's a great anecdote. I like that. I mean, Lyndon, you kind of characterised it with all your different voices when we were talking about this, bringing down to the warehouse. Can you talk us through that? That was great.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about Steve's righteous people, and people held the tech. So on the tech side, what differentiates the B2B business from B2C is they'll have 30,000 products, not a problem, but then they'll have 20,000 customers, and all those customers will have a unique price for every product. So you multiply the two together, and then they've got differentiated prices for how many they buy, the discount banding. So you get into millions and millions of rows of data, and the sheer volume, you can't sync, the technology to get cleverer and clever to sync these things overnight between your ERP systems and your e-commerce platform becomes incredibly technically challenging. But if you have the right people in the organizations, they go, we've been around for 100 years. We don't need all these pricing. We can simplify that. We can actually cut down the number of pricing breakpoints and make that data manageable, and suddenly everybody wins. And also, finally, the actual merchant understands the pricing model, which they probably don't know until this exercise happens.
Yeah, and then you can start building on that, this compensatory models, discounting, but it starts with having good data, right? Absolutely. So I'm glad we all agree. What data is an issue, and I'm glad we've got 3 really cohesive views with some different points of view, but coming together. Can we get some examples of, how product data is impacting you operationally or your customers, particularly when we're talking about incomplete or fragmented product data? And maybe, Lyndon, I could get you to pick up on that, because you were talking about the chat ringing down to the warehouse, and well, if the number says that in the ERP, but it says that in the PIN, who loses the help when that's happening?
And yeah, this comes to the single source of truth. And so it starts off with the PIN being the single source of truth, and until it's the warehouse that's a single source of truth for the stock number, because Rob counts the stock on the shelf and it's not what's in the ERP system. So it's a case of learning that actually there is no single source of truth. Each system has a piece of the single source of truth, and it's knowing which system has which, and then being able to build the tech to sync up those relevant parts of fields between the systems, so you don't end up in this scenario. But probably a good way to get out of this. I know to Jane. And
yeah, and to kind of build on that side, is you've got your data that you need on your side, and then you've got the data that the customer needs. Now, from our side, we need to think about actually how those pallets are built, what actually fits onto a pallet, how you actually deliver that, all of those kind of structural, functional things that you actually need within your warehouse. But then there's the data that the customer needs, and in this case, we're passing that customer along through an extra business there. But that customer wants to know everything about the product, and historically, as we've spoke about a couple of times today, we're not very good in the B2B space of actually giving that end consumer the data that they want in the way that they want it. We're all used to that direct-to-consumer experience, that nice Shopify website, and having all of that information. And the problem is, actually, in a lot of our cases, we're dealing with legacy systems and legacy companies. We don't have all of that data, so we need to find a way to actually build it from scratch, because we don't have optimized titles, we don't have all of the images, we don't have videos, we don't have all of these things that a customer expects, and we need to make it.
I think if you're being super pragmatic, the visual content you've got can be a quick way to hack your way to some improvements in terms of experience. And you definitely need all of the right attributes, and that could be a longer term play that you could drive improvements from. But in 2 of the last 3 businesses I've been in, fixing images and visual content has really, really helped. Multiple businesses, high returns of the products because of poor quality of images from either the manufacturers or what we were taking in-house. If you're in the workshop here and you've heard me talk about a teapot, that's the hospitality and catering equipment business we're at. One of our top products had a picture of a teapot on it. If you clicked on that and purchased it, you wouldn't receive a teapot, you'd receive 10 teapot lids. So imagine that at scale across 50,000 products, how many other teapots were there in the range where we were frustrating customers and their business every single time we delivered it. And then you've got all the cost of the return logistics of processing and return and. And when we were at RS, we had similar things, but we had a bigger range, and the returns rate was really high, the costs were really, really high. But in addition to that, we were missing out on sales. So you've got operational things, but you've also got a ton of missed sales opportunities. So we kicked off a project there to reshoot our top 50,000 products, because we tested it and we could see an uplift in conversion sales as a result of it. So that's why I always say that product information is a key commercial driver for your business, but often it's overlooked because it's not the sexiest team, or it's not the paid advertising team that gets the big bucks and big budgets. So yeah, please, if you are trying to drive some short-term improvements in the product data space, I'd always guide you towards your imagery.
Yeah, I've had exactly the same, where we came in on Monday morning and it was panic stations. How many of this security camera can we ship out? People have been jumping on it all weekend. This is an amazing, great deal. It wasn't actually a security camera, it was a drill bit set. And so loads of people were disappointed, but that was because we had the wrong image linked to the wrong barcode, and that had all fed through in the system. But there was only one image on there, and the title was for a drill bit set, and the content and copy was all for a drill bit set. But because it had that image, and that image said security camera all over it, people had just clicked it and added it into basket, thinking, I might get a win here, this is what I'm going to do. So yeah, we had the opposite problem, which is we had far too many sales on the drill bit set when we got that data wrong.
I think it's really interesting hearing you guys discuss this as well, because we talk about ERPs and PIMs, product data, but actually when it comes down to selling to the business customer, they are very much like consumers. They'll be looking at pictures, they'll be expecting description to be good. I mean, I think it's fair.
So if you think about the buyer, the personas, it's not always users that are buying it. So it could be something that doesn't really know the product, or they've had something dropped on their desk that says, buy me another one of these. And if you've got enough images and they're high quality and they're up close, you could work out, yeah, that is the thing that I need. So you can help people, you can make their job easy.
Yeah, and I think that you've driven home, both James and Steve, in your practical experience that you've shared, is that you don't want to disappoint the customer. That's the biggest issue, right? Shipping them the wrong product or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly to your point, is who is that customer, and it's making sure that you are building everything for that customer. And a lot of us in the room, our customer is actually just the buyer of that, let's say, builder's merchant or whoever. And we've got to think about the demographic changes. And this is one of the things one of the talks earlier was about actually winning over processes internally and difficulties that people can have. And historically, and I speak as one of them, historically buyers were aging boy guys. And that isn't the way that buying teams are going now. Buying teams actually stand to become more female, they're actually more Gen Z. And they don't want to write on a piece of paper to send it over via email to someone anymore. They expect to be able to purchase in the way that they've actually always grown up with and the way that they're used to. And this is something, it's a generational shift, it's a demographic shift, and it's something that we really need to keep in mind. Speak to the person as if in the way they want to be spoken to.
Yeah, I think when I remember back to last year, we had a panel I watched with Diageo, and they were talking about getting the product, getting the platform, to Chris's previous presentation right, was absolutely key, because if it didn't suit the needs of younger users coming through, they would just not use it at all. But then the older people that were using it would then, you're thinking, I'm going to ramp up the cost of this digital channel so I can ramp down my fax machines and my paper ordering, and that doesn't go away. So then you've got two big... I mean, Steve, can I just ask you to come in on this? Because you said, when we're preparing for this panel, listen to your customers. And I think that's what James has also said. But can you explain why you say listen to your customers in relation to the addressing incomplete or fragmented product data? Are they the best ones to tell you if you can't update it? Or is it because they see the problems at the end of it?
Yeah, because from my perspective, if the customers they'll give you the answers. And I've been in businesses where other people will try and give you the answers and say, this is what you need to do. But at the end of the day, it's the customers. And you can do this qualitatively and quantitatively. And I think we've spoken a bit about that earlier in the day as well. So there is so much insight analytics you can now pull, so you can operate at scale and say, these are the things that we need to fix. These are the areas that we need to improve. And I think back to when you do this internationally as well, a team we had in France was insistent. We are French. We know French customers. You English don't tell us how to do this. And we said, okay, fine, we'll run an experiment. You're saying you know your customers perfectly. This is what we were now changing the content. And when we made the changes, we were able to produce the perfect graph to show sales falling off a cliff. Because suddenly there was no visibility for these products externally, which meant there was no traffic coming in, which meant there was no sales. But we had all of the data that showed us what customers called these products, information that they needed. And so that's why I would always say, let the customers guide you. And yes, the team members within your business will have lots of experience, expertise. Do not ignore that. But the customer at the end of the day will be the one that does all just buy from you. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you guys know the club card reached in 1995, same year as Amazon IPO. If I say that, digital and data, both sides, two sides of the same coin. But McLaughlin, the chairman at the time, said to Don Humby, you know more about my customers through data in a month's trial than I ever have learned running this business for 40 years. So yeah, I really like to have the word that's bring that intelligent customer data from customers.
Yeah, just while we touch on that as well, things like that can be brilliant data, very expensive.
Yep.
Whereas the data that you can get from your marketplaces, from other sections within e-commerce, a lot of the times that's free. You know, when you go onto Amazon now, Amazon has Amazon Marketing Cloud, and that will tell you exactly the profile of your customer. They will tell you who they are. They'll tell you what they're looking for. So you can actually help coach your customer if you're B2B on those things as well. And that's all free.
Brilliant. I'd like to bring Lyndon in here, because we've talked about the issues, we've talked about where product data gets fragmented, what the issues are. So how do we centralise it effectively? I mean, I'd like to bring in, definitely like to bring in James and his view of implementing PIM as one way forward. I mean, you work with Magento systems, Signal Point, Source is kind of an execution system that sits on all of these. So what's your point of view in terms of how B2B companies should centralise product data?
Well, I hinted a bit so that in the previous response in that we all talk about one central source of truth, and that is not the truth. That's not how the real world works. You know, the stock comes from the warehouse system if you want it to be accurate, and it needs to come in real time. One of our clients, they sync 50,000 prices every night, but they don't sync the stock data because it's all out of date. But in real time, when the order is placed on the e-commerce side, it actually does API call, because that's very quick just to the stock system. It doesn't go to the MRP system or ERP system. And it's that understanding when to call and get data in real time, because it's important, and when to actually do bulk syncs of things like pricing data and customer information data. So the customer gets that B2C high-speed response, but they don't get disappointed that, you know, their box of M10 screens didn't turn up because in the moment they hit the buy now button, somebody else had got that stock. So it's working with your agency and your consultants to really understand who owns, which part system owns the data, which is a real-time communication, which is a syncing overnight process, and then you'll have success. And roll it out slowly. You don't need to do everything all at once. You know, get your prices synced nightly, get that working, because customers, they've all got their own personal pricing, they've all agreed it, and that's really how you start to lose trust. The stock problem, yes, it can be a problem, but bring that in next, and that's another little project. So you don't have to do a big bang. And I'm sure Chris had talk more about this as well if you talk to Christy about that.
But I mean, you say don't do big bang. I like the fact that you're saying, echoing Chris's previous presentation, people, process, technology, and that order, building Steve's point. And that you've sort of said, you know, you do eat the apple by both sides challenge. But bringing you in, James, you have decided that adding another system is going to help. Where, you know, what does Lyndon's point of view make you think? Do you see it? Definitely both of you going down the right path anyway, but do you see that you're having to do some of the work that Lyndon's talked about as well, that the BIM isn't just, you know, a silver bullet solution in that regard?
To call back to the previous presentation, it depends. For Paladone, the PIM was the right solution for what we're doing, because we already had this information, but we looked at it actually not necessarily as partly it was a data piece and making sure that everything was standardized and in one location, but it was also a massive time save. You know, my team was spending somewhere in the region of about 8 to 12 hours a week each, actually just pulling the data from various different systems in order to get it uploaded onto a website or onto a marketplace. So actually, it was our time cost saving was the biggest part. The data was okay; it wasn't too bad. But our ERP system it's old. It's run off like a Windows 95 computer in the basement somewhere. We still have to go in and plug new RAM into it, and a little bit of downtime while we upgrade. And the problem with that is that system, it's okay, it can be real time, it can do API calls, but the more calls we put through it or the more data we send to it, the more chances are we're going to trip it up. And so where we had to look at it is go, okay, an ERP change is going to cost the best part of £1 million. It's going to take at least 12 months, and 60% of the time it works almost. 40% of the time it fails completely. And is that where we want to be? No. So the reason why we've looked at the PIM is, okay, we had all of these data sources already. The data sources are okay, but they have their limitations. And what a PIM did for us was just sit as a layer of middleware that could then communicate to these places. Because like I say, predominantly we are marketplace driven. So places like Amazon, we can communicate with those directly, but we can also update our B2B platform directly. We can sync all of that, and that's doing the lifting rather than our naked old PC.
I think you've kind of gone on to answer the next question, which is having identified how to centralise product data and use it more effectively, and how to choose what to do first, which built you in my Lyndon sense of speak. We're kind of on into lots of both questions at once. Where do you start, and then how do you prioritise?
It depends. I think so. For where I'm at, would be my current business. We've already got a PIN. SAP is our ERP. So there's like a certain level of maturity there. One of the first decisions I made in a few weeks of joining was actually bringing in a syndicator. So that sits above our PIM between us and the thousands of manufacturers that we work with, who've got from APIs down to spreadsheets or PDF that they're trying to send to you when you're trying to launch a product. So that for us is how we are trying to launch thousands of items in an automated way, so there's no manual, and we then get the base of the pyramid sorted, which then frees up time of the experts, so the engineers who also could be a blended engineer and a digital person to optimize the top products and how to drive performance harder and faster there. So that's the next level for us in terms of what we've done. I don't tell the board what's coming next, which will be digital shelf analytics and additional insight that we can get real-time content, pricing, product competition view, so we can then go further on the journey. And in terms of prioritization, I've done it in every business I've been in. This is my favorite model for driving prioritization. It's a simple 4-box. Nathan probably know what it is because I've probably bored him to death with this in the past. But it's traffic and conversion. And if you've got a business that's got any number of SKUs, pull the data, last 12 months of traffic and conversion rate, and then plot it into the 4 boxes. Do nothing with your low traffic, low conversion. They are dog products. Don't spend time enriching those. But the high traffic, low converting ones, go fix the content there. Because people are looking at them but not buying it, probably because the content is terrible, or because you can't pay stock, or because your price is not competitive in the marketplace. So fix that box there, and that will drive commercial forwards. And then the other 2 boxes, you can do other things when it costs your business. So things that do convert strongly already, get more eyeballs on them. We talked about attention earlier, driving the money. And then the high traffic, high converters, you want the people in your purchasing department to be buying them better. You want to be stocking more of them. Yeah, they're real accelerators for your business performance. So that 4 box, for me, is the best way to prioritize and improve your product data.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way of just actually being honest with yourselves about where products are, because the instant any developer, we're in a very, very creative world in my space, and every single product that's created, that's their baby. They absolutely love it, and it's the best product that they've ever made. And so actually being honest with yourself about where that is, and it's an honesty with yourself about actually all of your product data and what you're doing with those listings themselves. Because when you look at those top sellers, okay, you can look at it and go, that's okay. But again, it's that honesty of, okay, is it best in class? And is it worth us actually spending the time and the effort to get there? And the way I always explain that internally is it's just good shopkeeping. People don't do enough of this, whether it's on B2B, whether it's at D2C, whether it's on marketplaces. People are there saying, well, we're selling, everything's great, but their shop is literally on fire behind them. There's no stock on the shelves and everything's in the wrong place. But we do the same thing. Think about that customer journey. How do they get into the store? Once they're in the store, how do they find the product that they want? Is that product then in stock? And it's making sure that you're doing those real basic shopkeeping things.
Good reminder. Then can I bring you in? Because
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be very quick on this time. So it's a great way for the techie guys who've got to implement this. I mean, if you're going to cut down your stock and products to 10% of what you've got and just put those online to start with, you're actually speeding up the development work. You're not causing complexities of scale with data. You're trying things out. You're contributing straight away to the bottom line. So everybody's now becoming on board. And also you start bringing up that conversation about, let's clear our SKU list out, because again, 90% is not making us any money, probably costing us. So, there is benefits. Again, start with the people and know how to select which products you're going to put online.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice practical answer from there. And we do have a little bit more time. We've got 10 more minutes. I do want to make sure we give people audience time a chance to ask some questions, so start thinking about those. But I'm going to start with you, Lyndon, and then come towards me, ending with Steve, because I'm going to put you on the spot, partly because of the answer that you've given us and the answer that you just gave us there in terms of process. It's AI. The question about AI. Always got to leave that to the last one. Can AI help in any of this? What are you seeing that's being useful?
It can, they're using snow-based. I mean, you get all the guys that got AI this and AI that. Actually, one of the simplest bits of AI I use is when I get a new client email, something I don't know, I email it off to another inbox called Contact. It's my company name, illuminise. AI picks it up and works out what's the first name, last name, phone number, and then it goes to traditional automation just to add it as a contact in my Google Contacts, and then also into my CRM. So you just use little bits of AI to deal with the messy stuff. You can use the same in your product data. Just scan all your data and sort it into buckets. This bit's missing out this SKU, this parameter's missing out this. Oh, this is an address. I can correct that automatically with AI. So get into buckets and then give that to your team. I'm guessing it would be best to do that after you found the 10% of product selling, though, because otherwise, you don't have the excuse to go through.
It's all right.
Sorry, guys. So I think my team operationally I use in ChatGPT all the time. It's just kind of almost to give them out. And
Do you lot left out?
Thanks for being filmed or not. No, I think it's the business isn't paying for it as a solution. So people are actually paying out their own pocket to be more effective at work. And I don't have a problem with my business doing that. But I trust them not to put into ChatGPT things that, so it's just be reasonably mindful of that. So there's that operation efficiency piece. But I think where we're going with it is trying to see where we can do some little tests and where can we reuse content from, we've produced like a really expensive explainer and some hoses. How do we then turn that into another one blog, into some email activity in a short video and put through a channel and allow customers to consume it through the channel that they want to consume it through. So it's just that content reuse piece, which works really well with AI because you're not asking them to create much, more kind of condensing extensive human written things down into a shorter bite-sized chunk. And I guess that's the final piece, is keep the human in the loop. So just don't publish stuff without checking it, otherwise you might find yourself as a disaster somewhere that's showing, written by ChatGPT or
That's been so James.
No, really. We use AI in a few different ways. The first thing is we want to make sure that people aren't using their own ChatGPT things at our place. Reason for that is because we're licensed, we're using other people's IP and we're locked into very, very strong NDAs. You don't want to annoy Disney. There are people that somebody's had experience there. We use Copilot because it means a lot to your organisation, but it is still the same thing. We use it in order to help bolster the information that we have. So we sell directly in 9 different markets, but then we also sell globally. And historically, if I wanted product translations, that would be sending them off to an agency. We'd be to get that done. It would cost per SKU. It got very expensive very quickly because, like you said earlier, it's multiples of multiples. Now, if you put that in, say, translates German, spit it back out, so using the right prompts, what it will do is actually give you 99% of what you want, but we can also then use the keywords that it generates for us in order to target using our advertising and everything else. So that's one way in which we use it, is to kind of build up those tools and systems we don't have. We've got one German speaker in our organisation, he can't translate every product. The other thing that we do as well is actually, again, a time cost saving. So I do quite a lot in terms of agentic AI, some of which we've built internally and I've built some. It's not difficult to start. You know, ask ChatGPT how you build a specific GPT for your organisation. And these are things like invoicing. One of our customers, invoicing that customer would take about 6 hours a week, because you'd need to take the data from them, repurpose it, reformat it, move it into the right things, and then manually enter it into our ERP. Whereas what we can do now is we build the tools, and it's got all of the like simple scripting in the back end. We now upload the file from them. It then spits out the files that can then just be uploaded directly into your ERP. So it's a massive time saving, but we're also using it in order to, it's got a lot of our SOPs in there. So because those SOPs are in there, rather than somebody having to remember it and having that, okay, what happens if they get hit by the bus? You know, it's what happens now is they can say, okay, how would I resolve this? And what it will do is go off to the SOP, have a look for it. You can choose whether to only use the SOP or whether to use web data, and then it will come back to them and say, this is how it's resolved, or this is who you email, and this is the template for the email.
Brilliant. I love that. I think you kind of really tied together both what Lyndon and Steve said in terms of AI being used to cleanse, classify, do those kinds of things, using agentic frameworks to do that. I was going to just comment that whether or not you choose to use Copilot, not that ChatGPT, personal, what I'm seeing on the the really big multinational scale is that they're buying their own GPTs. But then they can analyse that. What are my staff asked you about? What are they needing help with? But I think my final point on that was big features. And then we want to talk about people and the process and technology, but features, I think Steve, you spoke really well to have Gen AI, which really revolutionising marketing. Steve can build on that when it comes to product data, imagery, anything of those 7 touch points it takes to win over a B2B buyer. And you've got to have content factories there. You've got to do that in multiple languages, but also things like, where is my order? Going these programmatic issues that come over and you really use AI to help that. So I think that's been really, really useful answer. Thank you from all 3 of you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Or have I exhausted? I hope all the gentlemen here in the
This might be more appropriate for Steve. It might not even be relevant, I don't know. Do you work with CAD data, and if so, how do you manage that in the content supply chain through to the user experience? And do you work with configurable products, bundled products, and what challenges, headaches have you had with managing that data?
Yeah, thanks. We do use CAD. We've got about 5 or 6 different configurators for some of the different product categories that we sell. So this is something that's available. We generate revenue through it. Customers are happy-ish with it, but in the future it will be a lot better when we've re-platformed. So we have got like a gasket configurator where you can make to order from kind of 1 through to hundreds of whatever size, shape, dimension want. And then we have hoses as well, which is another very complex category where you can a long 5, 6, 7 meter metal hose with different couplings on the end of it, and all of that complexity is kind of not the best experience at the moment. It's okay, but it feels like it's probably a bit 1990s. I think some of how it's rendered and displayed to customers how it could be made available to them in the future. But it's something we have that we're not really exploiting it as much as we could.
Lyndon, do you have any clients?
Yeah, it's again, it's one reason why we use Magento and eCommmerce for B2B. It's got configurable and what's called bundle products. Best way to describe bundle products is you buy a computer, you've got to select the memory, the hard drive. Does it come with how many USB ports? So what's nice about Magento is that base functionality is in there. What we like to add to our clients is conditional. So if you've got the big hard drive, then you need the extra heatsink on. But if you've got the smaller one, you don't. And so then you can build the configurators pretty much in the user interface. Yes, you can get graphics down to make them nice and pretty and flashy, but actually that really solves a problem. And what's nice about Magento is they actually turn out to be lots of simple products which are stock items, or it's configured into a single SKU, again, which is a stock item. So again, it's one reason why we find that Adobe, Commerce, Magento really fits the B2B world well, just because of that built-in feature of one of them anyway.
And on the platforms available. But yes, you're right. It's an incredibly complex platform in that regard. So I could sit and talk about that all day. Why we've ended up with Shopify for B2C, but Magento persists to be. But we don't have time, unfortunately. Maybe that's the one for another one. Yeah, but I'm for listening time. Any other questions before I let these lovely gentlemen go? I think. If there are, then we should please give them a hearty mouth of applause, because they've been really good.